I caught my best man and fiancée together in hotel room the night before wedding, so I destroyed his career, got him fired, and sent him to prison for fraud. He lost everything while I found true love. My best friend Albert, 29M, slept with my fiancée Alexa, 27F, 2 days before our wedding. I, 28M, have known Albert since college. We were roommates for 3 years and he's been my closest friend for 8 years now. Alexa and I got engaged 18 months ago after dating for 4 years. We met at a marketing conference and hit it off immediately. She works as a social media manager for a tech startup downtown. I'm a software developer at a mid-sized consulting firm. Albert works at the same company as me but in the business development department. He's always been the charming guy who could talk his way into anything. The wedding was supposed to be this past Saturday. We had 150 guests coming, a venue booked at the Riverside Gardens, catering for $8,000, and everything planned down to the last detail. Alexa had been working on the wedding planning for over a year. Her sister Pearl, 25F, was the maid of honor and Albert was supposed to be my best man. 3 months ago, Albert offered to help coordinate the bachelor and bachelorette parties. He suggested we all stay at the Hampton Inn downtown since it was close to the bars we wanted to hit. He insisted on booking the rooms himself because he said he had some corporate discount that could save us money. I thought it was nice of him to handle the logistics. The bachelor party was last Thursday night. We went to 3 different bars and ended up at a club until 2 a.m. Albert was buying rounds all night and seemed to be having a great time. Alexa's bachelorette party was the same night but they went to different places. The plan was for everyone to meet up at the hotel bar around midnight for one last drink together before the wedding weekend officially started. I got back to my room around 2:30 a.m. and texted Alexa to see if she made it back safely. She replied that she was already in bed and would see me at the rehearsal dinner tomorrow. Everything seemed normal. Friday was the rehearsal at the church followed by dinner at Morelli's Italian restaurant. Both our families were there along with the wedding party. The dinner went well and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Alexa looked beautiful in her blue dress and kept squeezing my hand under the table. Albert gave a toast about friendship and loyalty that had everyone laughing. After dinner, some of the younger crowd wanted to continue the party back at the hotel bar. I was tired but Alexa said she wanted to go for just one drink. We got to the hotel around 10 p.m. and ordered a round for everyone. The group included Albert, Alexa, her sister Pearl, my brother Tom, 26M, and about 6 other friends from the wedding party. Around 11:30 p.m., I noticed Alexa checking her phone frequently. She seemed distracted and kept looking toward the hotel elevator. When I asked if everything was okay, she said she was just tired and wanted to head up soon. Albert was also on his phone more than usual but I didn't think much of it at the time. At midnight, Alexa said she needed some air and was going to step outside for a few minutes. She kissed me on the cheek and said she'd be right back. I was talking to my brother about the golf tournament we were planning for next month. After about 20 minutes, I realized Alexa hadn't come back. I texted her and she replied that she was feeling overwhelmed and had gone up to her room to rest. I looked around and noticed Albert was also missing. His beer was still half full on the table. I asked Pearl if she knew where Albert went and she said she thought he went to get more drinks from the bar upstairs. But when I checked, the upstairs bar had closed at 11 p.m. I went to the parking garage to see if either of their cars were there. Alexa's Honda was in her assigned spot but Albert's black BMW was gone. This struck me as odd because he had been drinking and shouldn't be driving anywhere. I went back to the bar and tried to enjoy the rest of the evening but something felt off. At 1 a.m., most people started heading to their rooms. I texted Alexa again to say goodnight and she replied with just a heart emoji. Usually she would write out full messages, especially the night before our wedding. I couldn't sleep and kept checking my phone. Around 2 a.m., I opened Instagram to scroll mindlessly. Alexa had posted a story 3 minutes earlier. It was a photo of what looked like a hotel room window with the city view. But there was something in the corner of the image that caught my attention. On the nightstand, I could see a room service menu with the number 412 printed at the top. Alexa was supposed to be in room 238. I had the room assignments list because Albert had shared it with the groomsmen earlier in the week. I got dressed and took the elevator to the 4th floor. Room 412 was at the end of the hallway. I stood outside the door for about 5 minutes trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. Then I heard Alexa's laugh from inside the room. It was her distinctive giggle that she does when she's really enjoying herself. I knocked on the door. There was silence for about 30 seconds, then shuffling sounds. Albert opened the door wearing just a hotel bathrobe. His hair was messy and he had lipstick on his neck. Behind him, I could see Alexa sitting on the bed with the sheet pulled up to her chest. Albert looked me straight in the eye and said he could explain. I walked past him into the room. Alexa started crying and saying my name over and over. I pulled out my phone and took 3 photos before either of them could react. I told Alexa she could keep the engagement ring because it was fake anyway. This wasn't true but I wanted to hurt her in that moment. Her face went completely white. I told Albert that his friend Stephanie, 26F, from the accounting department had been collecting evidence of him taking credit for her work on the Morrison account and the Patterson proposal. His smug expression disappeared instantly. Then I told them both that I had just forwarded the photos to Albert's girlfriend Lisa, 28F. He had been dating her for 6 months and had introduced her to our friend group just last month. Alexa started screaming at Albert asking if he had a girlfriend this whole time. I left them arguing and went back to my room. I called my parents at 3 a.m. and told them the wedding was cancelled. My mom started crying, but my dad just asked what I needed them to do. I told them to call the vendors in the morning and cancel everything. I drove to Danny's diner and sat there until 6 a.m. writing emails to our HR department about Albert. I had screenshots from Stephanie showing how Albert had presented her market analysis as his own work. I also had email chains where he had pressured junior staff to work unpaid overtime on his projects. By 7 a.m. Saturday morning, I had cancelled the photographer, the florist, the DJ, and the catering. The venue was the hardest call because they kept asking for a reason. When I told them what happened, the manager said they had dealt with similar situations before and offered to refund 70% of our deposit instead of the 20% stated in the contract. Alexa had sent me 47 text messages and 12 emails by noon on Saturday. She went from apologizing to accusing me of overreacting to begging me to call her. In one of her emails, she blamed Albert for manipulating her and said she realized she had made a terrible mistake. She sent these emails from her work account, which I knew was monitored by her company's IT department. Lisa called me Saturday afternoon. She thanked me for sending the photos and said she had suspected Albert was cheating but hadn't had any proof. She told me Albert had been lying to her about where he was spending his evenings and had been getting phone calls he wouldn't answer in front of her. Lisa and I met for coffee on Sunday morning. She brought a folder full of evidence about Albert that she had been collecting. Apparently, he had been cheating on her with at least 2 other women besides Alexa. She had screenshots of dating app conversations and credit card receipts from restaurants where he had taken other women. Lisa works as a project manager for one of our company's biggest clients. She told me she planned to bring her concerns about Albert's professional conduct to her supervisor. Her company had been considering expanding their contract with us, but she said Albert's behavior would definitely impact that decision. On Monday morning, I went to HR with Stephanie and we presented everything we had on Albert. The HR director, Patricia, 45F, took detailed notes and said they would launch an immediate investigation. She asked if I needed time off to deal with a personal situation, but I said I preferred to stay busy with work. Albert was called into HR on Tuesday morning. According to Stephanie, he was in there for over 2 hours. When he came out, his face was red and he looked shaken. He tried to approach me at my desk, but I walked away. Alexa kept calling and texting, but I never responded. On Wednesday, she showed up at my apartment building. The doorman called up and I told him not to let her up. She stood outside for an hour holding a sign that said she was sorry. I watched from my window as building security eventually asked her to leave. Albert sent me one text message on Thursday. It just said that I had ruined his life. I replied with a screenshot of him standing in the hotel room doorway in his bathrobe, and wrote underneath it, "You ruined your own life." Update 1: A lot has happened since my last post and I wanted to update everyone who was following this situation. The past 3 weeks have been intense, but things are finally starting to settle down. Albert was fired from our company last Friday. It wasn't just because of the evidence Stephanie and I presented to HR. It turns out Lisa had been documenting his unprofessional behavior for months. She brought detailed records to her supervisor showing how Albert had been lying to clients about project timelines and overcharging for services he wasn't actually providing. Lisa's company was considering terminating their contract with us because of Albert's conduct. This contract represents about 15% of our annual revenue, so when Lisa's supervisor called our CEO directly, things moved very quickly. Albert was called into a meeting with HR, his department head, and the CEO on Thursday morning. He was terminated effective immediately and escorted out by security. The HR investigation also revealed that Albert had been falsifying expense reports for the past year. He had been claiming meals and travel expenses for client meetings that never actually happened. The total amount was over $12,000. Our company is pursuing legal action to recover the money. Alexa was also fired from her job, but for different reasons. Remember how she had been sending me emails from her work account? Well, her company's IT department flagged the personal emails as a misuse of company resources. When they reviewed her email history, they found hundreds of personal messages sent during work hours, including explicit conversations with Albert that went back 4 months. Alexa had also been using company time to plan our wedding. She had been making vendor calls, scheduling appointments, and even doing wedding research during work hours. Her supervisor found browser history showing she spent 2 to 3 hours per day on wedding planning websites instead of working on her assigned social media campaigns. But the thing that really got her fired was that she had been giving Albert inside information about her company's social media strategies. Her startup was competing for the same clients as Albert's department, and she had been sharing confidential campaign details with him. This violated her non-disclosure agreement and several company policies. The most satisfying part happened 2 weeks ago. Albert had been scheduled to present a major project proposal to potential clients. This was a big deal because landing this contract would have meant a promotion for him. I knew about the presentation because it was all he had talked about for months. What Albert didn't know was that I had discovered his entire presentation was copied from a competitor's public case study. I had found the original document while doing research for my own project. It was published by a marketing firm in Chicago 6 months ago and was available on their website. I printed out the original case study and left it on Stephanie's desk with a note suggesting she might want to share it with the appropriate people. She forwarded it to Patricia in HR, who then shared it with the department head. On the day of Albert's presentation, instead of presenting to clients, he was called into another HR meeting. They confronted him with the plagiarized material and he couldn't explain how his presentation was nearly identical to the Chicago firm's case study. This was the final straw that led to his termination. Lisa has been incredibly helpful throughout this process. She connected me with a lawyer who specializes in employment issues because Albert had been threatening to sue me for defamation. The lawyer reviewed all my evidence and said Albert had no case. Everything I had shared with HR and Lisa was factual and well documented. Lisa also helped me understand how deep Albert's deception had been. She showed me text messages where he had been planning to break up with her after our wedding. He had told her he was getting tired of their relationship and wanted to focus on his career. Meanwhile, he had been telling Alexa that he was falling for her and wanted to start a serious relationship. Alexa tried a different approach 2 weeks ago. She showed up at my office building and waited in the lobby until I came down for lunch. She followed me to the sandwich shop across the street and tried to start a conversation. I ordered my food and left without acknowledging her. She then sent a letter to my apartment through my building's mail system. It was 6 pages long and detailed how sorry she was and how Albert had manipulated her. She claimed he had told her that I was having doubts about the marriage and was planning to call off the wedding anyway. She said he convinced her that I wouldn't be hurt because I secretly didn't want to get married. I showed the letter to Lisa and she laughed. She told me Albert had used similar manipulation tactics on her. He would tell her that her friends didn't really like her or that her family thought she was making bad decisions. It was his way of isolating her and making her dependent on his version of reality. The financial cleanup from the canceled wedding took longer than expected. The venue ended up refunding 80% of our deposit because they said the circumstances were exceptional. The photographer was understanding and only charged us for the engagement session we had already done. The florist kept our deposit, but we expected that. The hardest part was dealing with all the wedding gifts that had already arrived. We had received about 40 gifts from early guests. I spent a weekend writing thank you notes and return shipping labels to send everything back. Some relatives insisted I keep their gifts anyway, but I returned everything except a set of kitchen knives from my uncle because he said he had already thrown away the receipt. My brother Tom helped me move all of Alexa's belongings out of my apartment. She had been gradually moving her things in over the past year and I hadn't realized how much stuff she had accumulated. We packed everything into boxes and I arranged for her to pick them up from the building storage room when I wasn't home. Going through her belongings was when I found more evidence of the affair. Hidden in a jewelry box was a hotel key card from the night I caught them. It was for room 412. I also found a receipt from a restaurant where she and Albert had dinner 3 weeks before our wedding. The receipt was dated on a night when she had told me she was having dinner with her sister. Work has actually been going well. With Albert gone, our department is functioning much better. Stephanie was promoted to senior analyst and is now leading the projects Albert used to handle. She's been giving me credit for helping expose his misconduct and several colleagues have thanked me for bringing the situation to light. The biggest surprise came last week when I ran into Pearl, Alexa's sister, at the grocery store. She approached me and apologized for not warning me about what was happening. She said she had suspected something was going on between Alexa and Albert for about a month before the wedding but wasn't sure how to handle it. Pearl told me she had seen them having lunch together twice when Alexa had claimed to be at work meetings. She also said Alexa had been acting secretive about her phone and had started working out more and buying new clothes. Pearl thought maybe Alexa was planning a surprise for me, so she didn't say anything. Pearl also revealed that Alexa had lied to the family about why the wedding was canceled. She told everyone that I had called it off because I wasn't ready for marriage. Pearl only learned the truth when she saw my Facebook post about the situation. She was angry that Alexa had made me look like the bad guy to their entire family. I asked Pearl not to get involved in the drama, but she said she had already told her parents the real story. Apparently, Alexa's parents are not happy with her and have been pressuring her to apologize to me properly. They also made her pay back the money they had contributed to the wedding since it was canceled due to her actions. Update 2: The situation has taken some unexpected turns and I wanted to update everyone on the latest developments. Some of you had asked about Albert and Alexa's current situations, and I now have more information about what's been happening with both of them. Albert has been struggling to find new employment. Word travels fast in our industry and several companies in town have connections to our firm. Lisa's company sent out a professional notice about terminating their contract with us specifically due to Albert's conduct. This notice was shared with other companies in their network as a warning about his professional behavior. I found out about Albert's job search because he listed me as a reference on applications without asking permission. 3 different companies called me over the past month asking about his work performance. I was honest about why he was terminated and shared the details about the plagiarism and expense fraud. Each company thanked me for the information and said they would not be moving forward with his application. Albert apparently tried to start his own consulting business, but that fell apart quickly. He was using his personal LinkedIn to promote services he wasn't qualified to provide. Several of our former clients contacted our company to ask if Albert was still affiliated with us after he reached out to them directly trying to steal their business. Our legal department sent Albert a cease and desist letter demanding he stop using our company's project examples in his marketing materials. He had been showing potential clients work that Stephanie and I had actually completed and claiming it as his own achievements. The most interesting development happened 3 weeks ago when I got a call from Detective Rodriguez, 40SF, with the Financial Crimes Unit. Apparently, Albert's expense fraud was more extensive than our company initially realized. The police investigation found that he had also been running a credit card scam using client information he had access to through his work. Albert had been creating fake vendor accounts and submitting fraudulent invoices to our accounting department. He would then have the payment sent to accounts he controlled. The total amount stolen was over $45,000, which makes it a felony charge. He was arrested last Tuesday and is currently out on bail. I was asked to testify about the timeline of events and the evidence I had provided to HR. The detective said my documentation had been crucial in building their case. Stephanie also testified about the pattern of Albert taking credit for other people's work, which helped establish his character for dishonesty. Alexa's situation has been different but equally dramatic. After losing her job, she moved back in with her parents in the suburbs. She had been living paycheck to paycheck despite making decent money, so she couldn't afford her apartment without employment. Pearl reached out to me again 2 weeks ago with some surprising information. She said Alexa had been lying to everyone about the extent of her relationship with Albert. According to Pearl, Alexa had been planning to leave me for Albert even before the wedding. The hotel incident wasn't a mistake or moment of weakness, it was part of a longer-term plan. Pearl found text messages on Alexa's old phone that she left at their parents' house. The messages showed that Alexa and Albert had been discussing getting together after my wedding for over 2 months. They had planned for Alexa to go through with the wedding to avoid embarrassing both families, then divorce me within a year so they could be together openly. The messages also revealed that they had been intimate multiple times before the hotel incident. They had been meeting at Albert's apartment when Lisa was out of town for work. Alexa had been lying to me about working late or having dinner with friends on those nights. What made this discovery even worse was that they had been making fun of me in their messages. Albert called me naive and boring. Alexa wrote that she felt sorry for me because I was so trusting. They joked about how easy it was to fool me and made bets about whether I would figure out what was happening before the wedding. Pearl was disgusted by what she found and decided to share the messages with their parents. Alexa's mother called me to apologize and said she was ashamed of her daughter's behavior. She asked if there was anything she could do to make up for the pain Alexa had caused. I told Alexa's mother that I appreciated the apology but just wanted to move on with my life. She understood and said the family would respect my wish to have no contact with Alexa. She also mentioned that Alexa was having trouble finding new employment because her previous company had given her a negative reference. The legal consequences for Alexa came from an unexpected direction. Remember how she had been sharing confidential information with Albert about her company's social media strategies? Well, her former employer filed a lawsuit against her for violating her non-disclosure agreement and causing them to lose 2 major clients. One of those clients had been considering a large social media campaign but chose a different agency after learning that their confidential information had been shared. The startup is seeking damages for lost revenue and legal fees. Alexa can't afford a lawyer and is trying to represent herself in court. I also learned that Alexa had been stealing from me during our relationship. When I was going through bank statements for the lawyer, I noticed several unauthorized charges on my credit card. Alexa had memorized my card number and had been making small purchases that I hadn't noticed. The total amount was about $800 over 6 months. These weren't emergency purchases or things for our shared expenses. She had been buying clothes, cosmetics, and paying for lunches with friends. When I confronted her about this through Pearl, Alexa claimed she thought I wouldn't mind because we were engaged and planning to share finances anyway. I filed a police report about the credit card fraud. The officer said it was considered theft regardless of our relationship status because she didn't have permission to use my card. Alexa will likely face charges for this as well, though the amount might only result in a misdemeanor. The most unexpected twist came when Lisa started dating someone new. His name is Robert, 32M, and he works as a security consultant. Lisa and I had remained friends throughout this ordeal and she introduced me to Robert 2 weeks ago when we all met for coffee. Robert had an interesting perspective on the whole situation because he specializes in investigating corporate fraud and employee misconduct. He reviewed all the evidence I had collected and was impressed by how thorough my documentation had been. He said most people don't think to gather evidence the way I did, which made the HR investigation and police case much stronger. Robert also pointed out that Albert's behavior showed classic signs of narcissistic personality traits. He explained that people like Albert often target individuals who are trusting and successful because they enjoy the manipulation and want to tear down what other people have built. Through Robert's connections, I learned that Albert had actually been fired from a previous job for similar issues. He had been caught falsifying reports and taking credit for colleagues' work at a company he worked for right after college. This information never came up during his background check when our company hired him because his former employer had agreed not to share details in exchange for Albert leaving quietly. Work has continued to improve significantly. Our department received recognition from upper management for the quality of work we've been producing since Albert left. Stephanie and I were both given bonuses for our contributions to the Morrison account that Albert had tried to take credit for. I've also been dating someone new, though I'm taking things slowly this time. Her name is Rachel, 26F, and she works as a nurse at the Children's Hospital downtown. We met through a hiking group I joined a few months ago. She knows the basic outline of what happened with Alexa and Albert but isn't interested in hearing all the details, which I appreciate. Rachel has a completely different personality from Alexa. She's direct and honest about everything, even small things like if she's running late or if she doesn't like a restaurant I suggest. After experiencing Alexa's constant lying and manipulation, I find Rachel's straightforward communication style refreshing. Update 3: I'm writing this final update because several people have been asking about the long-term outcomes for everyone involved. It's been almost 8 months since the original incident and I finally feel like this chapter of my life is completely closed. Albert pleaded guilty to the felony fraud charges and was sentenced to 18 months in prison plus 5 years probation. He also has to pay restitution of $47,000 to our company. His lawyer tried to argue for just probation, but the judge said the premeditated nature of the crimes and the violation of trust made prison time necessary. The sentencing hearing was interesting because several character witnesses spoke about Albert's pattern of dishonest behavior. Lisa testified about the personal manipulation, and Stephanie spoke about the professional misconduct. Even some of his college friends submitted statements describing times when Albert had cheated or stolen from them. Albert's parents attended the hearing and approached me afterward to apologize. They said they had suspected Albert had problems with honesty but never realized how serious it had become. His father offered to help with the restitution payments, but our company's lawyer said that was between Albert and the court. I saw Albert one more time before he reported to prison. Rachel and I were having dinner at a restaurant downtown when he walked in with someone I didn't recognize. He was wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit well and looked like he had lost weight. When he saw me, he stared for a moment but didn't approach our table. Rachel asked if I wanted to leave but I said we should just enjoy our meal. About 10 minutes later, Albert's dinner companion got up and left the restaurant abruptly. Albert sat alone for another few minutes, then paid his check and left without finishing his food. I later learned from Lisa that his date had recognized him from the news coverage of his arrest and decided she didn't want to be associated with him. Alexa's situation resolved differently but not necessarily better. She lost the lawsuit filed by her former employer and owes them $23,000 in damages. She couldn't afford to pay the judgment, so they garnished her wages from the part-time retail job she eventually found. The credit card fraud charges against Alexa were dropped after she agreed to pay full restitution plus court costs. She paid me back the $800 through a payment plan over 6 months. Her mother actually made most of the payments because Alexa's income was so low. Pearl told me that Alexa had to move back into her childhood bedroom and is working at a clothing store in the mall. She applied for dozens of jobs in marketing and social media but can't get hired because of the negative reference from her previous employer and the background check issues from the lawsuit. The most dramatic development with Alexa happened about 2 months ago. She started dating Albert's younger brother Kyle, 25M, apparently thinking this would somehow help her stay connected to Albert while he was in prison. Kyle works as a mechanic and had never been close to Albert, so this plan backfired spectacularly. When Kyle learned the full story of what Albert and Alexa had done, he broke up with her immediately. He also told his family about Alexa's role in Albert's downfall, which eliminated any possibility of her getting sympathy or support from that direction. Kyle later called me to apologize for his brother's actions and to let me know he had no intention of maintaining any relationship with Alexa. Alexa made one final attempt to contact me about 3 months ago. She sent a letter through a mutual friend asking if I would write a character reference for her to help with job applications. The friend who delivered the letter said Alexa was convinced that a positive reference from me would prove to employers that she wasn't a bad person. I declined to write the letter and asked the mutual friend not to serve as a messenger for Alexa again. I explained that writing a reference would require me to lie about Alexa's character, which I wasn't willing to do. The friend understood and said she hadn't realized the extent of what Alexa had done. My life has moved forward in every positive way possible. Rachel and I have been together for 6 months now and the relationship continues to be healthy and drama-free. She has 2 young kids from a previous relationship, and I've enjoyed getting to know them. We've talked about moving in together next year after her lease expires. Work has been excellent. I was promoted to senior developer and now lead a team of 4 people including Stephanie. We've landed several major contracts and our department has become one of the most profitable in the company. The CEO mentioned our turnaround as an example of how removing toxic employees can transform an entire workplace culture. I also bought a house in a different neighborhood across town. It's a 3-bedroom ranch with a big backyard that's perfect for when Rachel's kids visit. Moving out of the apartment where Alexa and I had lived together was important for my mental closure on that relationship. The most satisfying moment came last month when I received a LinkedIn notification that Albert had updated his profile from prison. He listed his current status as serving time for financial crimes and said he was looking forward to rebuilding his career upon release. Several of our former colleagues left comments questioning why he would post this information publicly. Lisa is engaged to Robert and they're planning a small wedding next spring. She asked if Rachel and I would like to attend, which shows how all of our lives have moved past the drama Albert and Alexa created. Lisa said she considers the whole experience a blessing in disguise because it led her to someone much better suited for her. I've learned to trust my instincts better and not ignore red flags in relationships or friendships. Rachel and I have talked about communication and honesty being the foundation of any successful partnership. She's met my family and friends, and everyone comments on how much happier and more relaxed I seem now. The financial recovery took longer than expected but worked out well in the end. Between the vendor refunds, the restitution payments, and money I saved by not going through with an expensive wedding, I actually came out ahead financially. I used the extra money as a down payment on the house. Looking back, I'm grateful this all happened before the wedding rather than after. Discovering Alexa and Albert's betrayal when I did saved me from years of lies and manipulation. Some people have told me I should feel angry or bitter about what they did, but mostly I just feel relieved that they're both out of my life permanently. The whole experience taught me that some people are fundamentally dishonest and will hurt anyone to get what they want. Albert and Alexa deserved each other, and they got exactly what their actions earned them. Meanwhile, I'm building a life with someone who shares my values and treats me with respect. I don't plan to post any more updates about this situation because there's nothing left to resolve. Albert will be in prison for the next year and Alexa will be dealing with the consequences of her choices for much longer. Rachel and I are focused on our future together, and that's the only story that matters to me now. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. I stood up against my brother's misogyny at my own wedding. 6 months later, my Sil left him and my parents finally saw the truth. I, 29F, got married last month to my husband Daniel, 31M. We've been together for 5 years, having met at a mutual friend's barbecue. I remember that day so clearly. I was helping set up the food table when Daniel offered to lend a hand. We got talking about our shared love of obscure 80s movies, and the rest, as they say, is history. Our relationship hasn't always been smooth sailing. We've had our fair share of arguments and disagreements, especially in the early days when we were still figuring each other out. But we've always managed to work through our issues with open communication and mutual respect. That's why, when Daniel proposed 2 years ago during a hike to our favorite scenic overlook, I didn't hesitate to say yes. We spent over a year planning our wedding. I'm not usually one for big, elaborate events, but I wanted this day to be special. We chose a beautiful rustic venue, a converted barn with strings of fairy lights and wildflower centerpieces. It was a perfect blend of elegance and casual charm, just like us. We invited about 150 guests, a mix of family, friends, and co-workers. I was especially excited for my colleagues to meet my family. I've worked hard to build my career as a software engineer, and I'm proud of where I am today. It hasn't always been easy, especially being a woman in a male-dominated field, but I've persevered and earned the respect of my peers. The day of the wedding arrived, and everything was going perfectly. I felt like a princess in my dress, a simple, elegant gown with lace detailing that I'd fallen in love with the moment I tried it on. Daniel looked incredibly handsome in his tailored suit. When we saw each other at the end of the aisle, I felt my heart skip a beat, just like it did on our first date. The ceremony was beautiful. We wrote our own vows, and I'll never forget the look in Daniel's eyes as he promised to support me in all my dreams and aspirations. After the ceremony, we took what felt like a million photos with our families and the wedding party. My cheeks were sore from smiling so much, but I didn't care. The reception started off great. The caterers outdid themselves with a spread that catered to everyone's tastes and dietary needs. Daniel and I had our first dance to our song, the cheesy 80s ballad that was playing when we first kissed. Then we cut the cake together, playfully smearing a bit of frosting on each other's noses for the cameras. Then it was time for the toasts. My maid of honor, my best friend since college, gave a heartwarming speech about our friendship and how happy she was to see me find someone who truly understood and supported me. Daniel's best man told some hilarious stories from their days as roommates, careful to keep things PG for the older relatives in attendance. My parents both said a few words. My mom got a bit teary-eyed as she welcomed Daniel to the family, and my dad made a corny joke about finally having someone to watch football with. It was all going so well. Finally, it was my brother Alex's, 33M, turn to give a toast. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Alex and I have had a complicated relationship for years. Growing up, we were close, always getting into mischief together. But as we got older, things changed. Alex became more traditional in his views, especially when it came to gender roles. He married young and expected his wife to be a stay-at-home mom, which she was happy to do. But he couldn't understand why I wanted a different path for myself. When I decided to major in computer science in college, Alex scoffed, saying it was a man's field and that I'd be better off studying something more suitable for a woman. I tried to brush off his comments, but they hurt. Over the years, his attitude only got worse. Every family gathering turned into an opportunity for him to make snide remarks about my career choices or my relationship status. When I introduced him to Daniel, I hoped things would improve. Daniel is supportive of my career and we share household responsibilities equally. I thought maybe seeing a healthy, modern relationship would change Alex's perspective. But instead, he just started making comments about how Daniel needed to man up and control his woman. Despite all this history, I still wanted Alex to be part of my wedding day. I hoped that maybe, just maybe, he'd put aside his judgmental attitude for one day and be happy for me. As he stood up to give his toast, I held my breath. Alex started off okay, talking about some childhood memories. But then things took a turn. He made a joke about how surprised he was that I actually managed to find someone willing to marry me, given how career-obsessed I am. The knot in my stomach tightened as he went on to say that he hoped Daniel was prepared for a wife who cares more about her job than her family. I felt like I had been slapped. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, but I could tell he was angry too. Alex continued, saying things like I guess miracles do happen and maybe now she'll finally learn to cook something other than microwave meals. The room fell uncomfortably silent. I looked around and saw people shifting in their seats, avoiding eye contact. My parents looked mortified, but they didn't say anything. This was typical, they'd always avoided confrontation, preferring to sweep issues under the rug rather than address them head on. When Alex finally finished his toast, there was awkward, scattered applause. I felt humiliated and angry. This was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, and Alex had managed to turn it into yet another opportunity to belittle me and my choices. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, where I broke down crying. My maid of honor followed me, offering comfort and suggesting we ask the DJ to play my favorite dance song to lighten the mood. But I knew I couldn't just pretend nothing had happened. After I composed myself, I went to find Alex. I found him at the bar, laughing with some of his friends as if he hadn't just ruined my wedding toast. I pulled him aside to a private area and confronted him about his speech. I told him how hurtful and inappropriate his comments were, especially on my wedding day. I explained that my career is important to me, but that doesn't mean I don't value my relationships or my new marriage. Alex got defensive immediately. He said I was being too sensitive and that he was just joking. He accused me of trying to ruin the wedding by making a big deal out of nothing. When I pressed him on why he thought it was okay to humiliate me in front of our guests, he stormed off, muttering something about how I couldn't take a joke. I returned to the reception, trying to put on a brave face for the rest of the night. But the damage was done. The mood had shifted, and I could tell people were gossiping about what had happened. Daniel did his best to cheer me up, even convincing the DJ to play a marathon of 80s hits to get people dancing and distract from the drama. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my brother had tainted one of the most important days of my life. After the wedding, I got texts from my parents saying I should apologize to Alex for overreacting and causing a scene. They said I should have just laughed off his comments and moved on. But I don't think I did anything wrong by standing up for myself. This wasn't just about one inappropriate toast, it was about years of snide comments and disrespect that had finally come to a head. Ida for confronting my brother about his inappropriate toast? Should I have just ignored it to keep the peace? I'm tired of always being expected to be the bigger person, but I also don't want this to drive a permanent wedge in my family. Edit. Thank you all for your responses. I want to clarify a few things based on the comments. 1. This isn't the first time Alex has made comments about my career. He's always been very traditional in his views and thinks women should prioritize being homemakers. We've had many arguments about this over the years, dating back to when I first chose my college major. 2. My parents tend to make excuses for Alex's behavior. They say things like that's just how he is or he doesn't mean any harm. They've never really held him accountable for his actions, which I think has only enabled his behavior. 3. Daniel has been incredibly supportive throughout all of this. He wanted to confront Alex himself, but I asked him not to because I didn't want to make the situation worse. He's been my rock through all of this, reminding me that I have nothing to be ashamed of. 4. For those asking about my career, I'm a software engineer at a tech company. I've been with the company for 5 years and was recently promoted to a senior position. I love my job and have worked hard to get where I am. Alex has always seemed resentful of my success, often making comments about how I'm neglecting my feminine side by focusing on my career. Update 1. It's been about a month since my original post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments. Reading them helped me realize that I wasn't overreacting and that my feelings were valid. It's been a difficult month, but your words have given me strength. A week after the wedding, my parents invited the whole family over for dinner. They said they wanted to clear the air and move past the wedding incident. I was hesitant, but Daniel encouraged me to go, saying it might be a chance for Alex to apologize. Daniel offered to come with me for support, but I decided to go alone, feeling like I needed to handle this myself. When I arrived at my childhood home, I was immediately hit with a wave of nostalgia. The house smelled like my mom's signature lasagna, a dish she always made when she was trying to smooth over family tensions. As I helped set the table, I was reminded of countless family dinners, some happy, some tense, but always ending with us coming together as a family. I hoped this dinner would be the same. Before dinner, my mom pulled me aside and asked me to be the bigger person and apologize to Alex for embarrassing him at the wedding. I was shocked. It was like we were kids again, with me always being expected to apologize even when Alex was clearly in the wrong. I refused and told her that I had nothing to apologize for. She looked disappointed but didn't push the issue further. During dinner, the tension was palpable. We made awkward small talk about the weather and my cousin's new baby, carefully avoiding any mention of the wedding. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and brought up the elephant in the room. He said we all needed to move on and forget about the wedding incident for the sake of family harmony. Alex piped up, saying he was sorry if I couldn't take a joke. It wasn't a real apology at all, and I could feel my anger rising. I thought about all the times I'd let his comments slide for the sake of keeping the peace, all the family gatherings I dreaded because of his attitude. I took a deep breath and decided it was time to address the issue head on. I calmly explained how hurtful Alex's words were, not just at the wedding but throughout our lives. I talked about how his constant belittling of my career choices had affected our relationship. I brought up specific instances, like the time he told me I was wasting my time when I was studying for a big certification exam, or when he implied that Daniel wasn't a real man for supporting my career. I also pointed out that making sexist comments about a woman's role in a marriage was never okay, joke or not. I explained how his attitudes were outdated and harmful, not just to me but to all women who want to pursue careers. To my surprise, my sister-in-law Lisa, 31F, spoke up. She said she had always been uncomfortable with the way Alex talked about women's roles and that she agreed his toast was inappropriate. She revealed that she sometimes felt pressured to conform to Alex's idea of a perfect wife and that it had caused tension in their marriage. This seemed to catch Alex off guard. I don't think he'd ever considered how his views might be affecting his own wife. My parents were clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. They kept trying to change the subject, suggesting we have dessert or look at old photo albums. But I stood my ground. I told them that I was tired of them making excuses for Alex's behavior and that if we were going to have a relationship moving forward, things needed to change. Alex got defensive again, accusing me of being oversensitive and unable to take criticism. But when I asked him to explain exactly what he was criticizing about me and his toast, he couldn't give a straight answer. He stammered something about how I should be grateful that Daniel was willing to put up with my career ambitions. The dinner ended on a tense note. My parents were upset that we couldn't just let bygones be bygones. Alex left in a huff, dragging Lisa along with him. Before they left, Lisa apologized to me quietly and asked if we could talk more another time. After I got home, Daniel was waiting up for me. He listened patiently as I recounted the whole evening, offering words of support and reassurance. He told me how proud he was of me for standing up for myself and suggested that maybe we should take some space from my family for a while, which I agreed with. The next day, I got a surprising text from Lisa. She said she had been thinking about our conversation and realized how much Alex's attitudes had affected her too. She confessed that she had given up her own career ambitions early in their marriage to fit Alex's idea of a good wife, and she was starting to regret it. She asked if we could meet for coffee to talk more. I'm meeting Lisa next week. I'm nervous but hopeful that maybe this could be a turning point in our relationship. As for Alex and my parents, I'm still unsure how to proceed. I know I can't change them, but I'm also not willing to keep accepting their behavior. I'm considering suggesting family counseling, but I'm not sure if they'd be open to it. Thank you all again for your support. It's given me the courage to stand up for myself and set boundaries with my family. I know the road ahead might be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm on the right path. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some developments. First, my meeting with Lisa went really well. We met at a quiet cafe near her workplace. I was surprised to learn she had recently started a part-time job at a local bookstore. Over coffee, we had a long, honest conversation about our experiences with Alex and my parents. Lisa confided that she had been struggling in her marriage because of Alex's outdated views on gender roles. She revealed that she had always dreamed of becoming a teacher, but Alex had discouraged her, saying that a wife's place was in the home. She said my confrontation at the family dinner had been a wake-up call for her, making her realize how much she had compromised her own desires to fit Alex's expectations. As we talked, Lisa opened up about her own family background. She came from a very traditional household, where her mother had always deferred to her father in all decisions. She realized that she had unconsciously fallen into the same pattern with Alex, afraid of rocking the boat or asserting her own needs. I shared some of my own struggles, both in my career and in standing up to Alex over the years. We laughed over some of the ridiculous things Alex had said in the past, finding humor in situations that had once only brought pain. By the end of our meeting, I felt like I had truly connected with my sister-in-law for the first time. Lisa and I have been meeting regularly for coffee since then, and it's been great to build a stronger relationship with her. She's even expressed interest in learning more about my career, asking questions about what I do and how I got into tech. It's been refreshing to have a family member show genuine curiosity about my work instead of dismissing it. As for Alex, things are still tense. He's been avoiding me, which honestly has been a relief. I've heard through Lisa that he's been complaining to his friends about how I've turned his wife against him, but he hasn't confronted me directly. Part of me hopes that this time apart will give him a chance to reflect on his behavior, but I'm not holding my breath. The most significant change has been in my relationship with my parents. After several heated phone calls and a lot of soul-searching, I decided to set some clear boundaries. I told them that I love them, but I'm no longer willing to tolerate their enabling of Alex's behavior or their dismissal of my feelings. At first, they were upset and accused me of tearing the family apart. My mom cried, saying she just wanted everyone to get along like we used to. I reminded her that even when we were kids, things weren't as harmonious as she remembered. She had just chosen to ignore the problems. But after a few weeks of limited contact, they seemed to be coming around. My mom called last week and actually apologized for pressuring me to forgive Alex without addressing the real issues. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. She even asked me about my work, showing a level of interest she never had before. Daniel has been my rock through all of this. He's supported my decisions and has even taken on the role of communicating with my family when it's been too stressful for me. His unwavering support has made me even more certain that I married the right person. We've had many discussions about family dynamics and how we want to approach things if we have children in the future. It's reassuring to know we're on the same page about creating a respectful, egalitarian household. On a personal note, I've been focusing on my own growth. I've started seeing a counselor to work through some of the long-standing issues with my family. It's been challenging to unpack years of complicated emotions and dynamics, but I already feel like I'm developing better tools to handle conflicts and set boundaries. At work, I've been channeling my energy into a new project. I'm leading a team developing an app that connects young girls with mentors in STEM fields. It's been incredibly rewarding, and I find myself thinking about how different my relationship with Alex might have been if we both had better role models for gender equality growing up. I'm not sure what the future holds for my relationship with Alex, but I'm learning that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being, even if it means creating distance from family members who don't respect me. It's a difficult lesson, but one that I think will serve me well in the long run. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. It's been invaluable in helping me navigate this difficult situation. I feel like I'm growing stronger every day, and a lot of that is thanks to the encouragement I've received here. Update 3, it's been 6 months since my wedding, and I wanted to give a final update on the situation with my family. The biggest news is that Alex and Lisa are separating. Lisa called me a few weeks ago to let me know. She said that after our talks, she started standing up to Alex more about his sexist comments and attitudes. This led to a lot of arguments, and ultimately, Lisa realized she couldn't stay in a relationship where she wasn't respected. Lisa shared that the final straw came when she expressed her desire to go back to school to get her teaching degree. Alex dismissed the idea, saying she was too old to start a new career and that she should focus on having more children instead. Lisa said she suddenly saw their whole relationship clearly and knew she couldn't continue living that way. I feel sad for Lisa, but I'm also proud of her for making such a difficult decision. We've grown much closer over the past few months, and I'm doing my best to support her through this transition. She's staying with a friend for now and is already enrolled in some education courses at the local community college. As for my parents, our relationship is slowly improving. They've started to recognize how their behavior has enabled Alex over the years. My mom has even started reading some books about feminism and gender equality that I recommended. It's a small step, but it means a lot to me. Last week, she called to tell me she had just finished Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg and wanted to discuss it. It was the first time we've ever had a real conversation about women in the workplace. My dad has been quieter about the whole situation, but I've noticed changes in his behavior too. He stopped making those little sexist jokes he used to think were harmless, and he actually asked me to explain my latest work project to him, listening with genuine interest. Alex, on the other hand, has become increasingly isolated from the family. He's blamed me for poisoning everyone against him, but the truth is, people are just finally standing up to his behavior. He refused to attend a recent family gathering, which was actually quite pleasant without the usual tension he brings. Daniel and I are doing great. This whole experience has brought us even closer together. We've had many discussions about family dynamics and how we want to approach things if we have children in the future. We've both agreed that we want to raise our kids, if we have them, in an environment where they feel free to pursue their passions, regardless of gender stereotypes. I've continued with counseling, and it's been incredibly helpful. I'm learning to set healthier boundaries and to not feel guilty about prioritizing my own well-being. I've also connected with a group of women in tech who have become a wonderful support system. We meet monthly to discuss our experiences and challenges in the industry, and it's been empowering to know I'm not alone in my struggles. My STEM mentorship app launched last month, and the response has been overwhelming. We've already matched over 500 girls with mentors, and the feedback has been incredibly positive. I can't help but think about how different my own journey might have been if I'd had access to something like this when I was younger. Looking back, I'm glad I stood up to Alex at my wedding, even though it was difficult. It set off a chain of events that, while challenging, have ultimately led to positive changes in my life and relationships. I've learned that it's okay to demand respect, to set boundaries, and to surround myself with people who support and uplift me. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have been invaluable. I feel like I'm in a much healthier place now, both personally and in my relationships. While I know there may still be challenges ahead, I feel equipped to face them with confidence and self-respect.